Trying PvP can be a rather daunting task. Not only do you have to learn how to play the individual game modes and maps, but you also have to figure out a new job while doing so. And just because you like something in PvE doesn't mean you're going to like it in PvP. In fact, if you're looking to give PvP a go, then you'll likely want to try something simple, so you can focus more on learning the fundamentals rather than fumbling with a combo-heavy job. But then there's the question of what job should you try? Well, here's 3 options I think are by far the best for anyone wanting to try PvP for the first time. Starting off our list is going to be the King of Chasing and the Lord of Unga Bunga Warrior. Like their PvE version, Warrior is incredibly easy to learn and play, not having any complicated combos or special mechanics you need to learn. As a tank, they are a frontliner, one who specializes in AoE and crowd control. Because of this, they love to fight, specifically when the enemy is grouped together, as most of their abilities are AoE or want to hit multiple targets. Speaking of abilities, let's give a quick overview of their kit. Starting with Bloodwetting, which is going to be your key survival tool. Upon using this ability, 3 things are going to happen. It'll grant you a shield for 10% of your health, cause your weapon skills to heal you for the damage you deal, and finally, the ability will transform into Chaotic Cyclone, a 8k potency AoE. Or to simplify, while active, the more damage you do, the more you're going to heal, which complements a couple of our other abilities like Origami, whose power starts out at a low 1000 but gets stronger the more HP you have, maxing out at 10k. It also inflicts a debuff to all enemies hit, reducing the damage they deal. For these reasons, you usually want to use it early in a fight so you can get the most out of its power and effect. Our other HP based ability is Onslaught, a single target gap closer whose damage starts out at 500, going up to 5000 the more HP you have. And similar to Origami, this attack also inflicts a debuff, causing the target to take more damage. You'll normally be using this to either start a fight or chase someone who's trying to flee. Lota is going to be our first crowd control ability and is by far the simplest of our skills, as all it does is pull the target to you while slowing them. Warrior's strongest ability, however, is going to be their good old monkey flip, Primal Rend, which allows you to jump to an enemy target, damaging and stunning not only them, but also any other nearby enemies, making it an incredibly versatile tool for attacking, disruption. It does anything you'd really want it to do. And last, but not least, we have to talk about their limit break, Primal Scream, which is a targeted cone that places a debuff on all enemies hit, preventing them from using their guard. Also, upon using Primal Scream, you will enter Inner Chaos, making you immune to all forms of crowd control, except White Mage, and doubling the damage most your weapon skills do. However, there is a trade-off, as while under Inner Chaos, you are unable to use your own guard. And now that we've covered the kit, let's go over a couple of tips for playing the job, starting with the biggest mistake a lot of new warriors make: knowing how to initiate a fight. Many new warriors love to use Primal Rend to start a fight, but rarely is that going to be the correct option. Primal Rend is one of the 2 AoE weapon skills you have to heal with your Bloodwetting, so when you use it to initiate a fight, you're effectively cutting your durability in half. Moreover, Primal Rend is also such a versatile tool when used in a fight. It can disrupt the enemy, it can catch someone trying to escape, or it can create an opening for a retreat. So instead of monkey flipping into the enemy to start a fight, try using your Onslaught plus Origami instead. Both of these abilities are strongest when a fight starts, only growing weaker as the fight continues, and both inflict powerful debuffs that help turn the fight more in your favor. Initiating with this way will also leave you with both your Primal Rend and your Cyclone, giving you access to significantly more durability and disruption than you would have if you would have initiated with Rend alone. But don't think jumping into the enemy is the only way to initiate a fight. Another powerful and safer option you have available to you is catching someone with Blota. Pulling someone out of position with this ability in many cases is a death sentence. And even if they do survive, they have to burn all their resources, effectively removing them from the fight. But more importantly, catching someone forces the enemy team to react, leading to a fight that by default is going to be more in your favor, as they have to move into you, you're not moving into them. Speaking of fighting, anytime you enter a fight, remember to use your Bloodwetting. As a warrior, people have a tendency to focus you, and you're going to need the healing that Bloodwetting provides to stay alive. You don't really have much durability outside of it. And the last tip I have for you is, when do you use your limit break? There are really 3 scenarios I try to look at. First, use it to start a fight, especially if it's going to secure an early kill, as that will push the encounter in your team's favor. The second scenario is going to be using it to remove somebody's guard. A lot of times, if you're in the middle of a fight, people are going to guard to stay alive. You can just stop that. And finally, use it before any map event, as it will heavily restrict what the enemy can do. That's basically everything for Warrior, so let's move on to the next job on our list, and the holder of the strongest crowd control ability in the game, White Mage. Now, them being a healer might make you think that they're going to be more support oriented, and while that is true to an extent, they're much more of an all-rounder, having good damage and utility with a surprising amount of durability thanks to their kit. So let's quickly cover it, starting with their strongest support tool, Aqua Veil, which is a targeted 8k shield that is able to remove most forms of crowd control. And if used in this way, the shield will double to 16k. This ability can single-handedly save people's lives. Removing a stun or a silence by itself is incredibly powerful, but doing that and granting what is essentially a free hit for most attacks is a bit ridiculous. Our other support skill, however, is much weaker. Cure 2 is a casted single target heal that is slightly weaker than a Recuperate. Now, you can hold up to 2 charges of this ability, but in most cases that won't be an issue, as it's not something you're really wanting to spam, as most jobs will just outdamage the heal, meaning you're primarily going to use it to either help a retreating party member or someone who's guarding. But Cure 2 actually does tie into another one of our abilities, Seraph Strike, an AoE gap closer that does 2 things when it's used. First, it will grant protect to you and any nearby party members, reducing the damage you take from the enemy. And second, it will change your Cure 2 to Cure 3, making it not only an instant cast, but also an AoE, making it significantly more usable. And moving on to our next ability is Afflatus Misery. It just does a lot of damage in an AoE. That's really it. Now, our next ability, however, and the last of our normal kit, is much more interesting, as it is single-handedly the most broken crowd control ability in the game, Miracle of Nature. It's a single target skill that transforms the enemy into a helpless creature for 2 seconds, which by itself is really good. But for some reason, they decided to make it so you couldn't remove this with Purify or any other CC removing ability, making it absolutely insane. But believe it or not, White Mage has another equally as annoying ability in their arsenal, that being their limit break, Afflatus Purgation, an 18k line AoE that not only stuns all enemies hit, but also grants all nearby party members increased damage and a 4k regen. And for some reason, this is on a 60-second cooldown, making it one of the shortest limit break charge times. Anyways, let's move on to some tips. Since White Mage tends to be a rather big annoyance if left alone, you'll often be the prime target for single target heavy jobs like Dragoon, Ninja, or Monk, who will likely try to jump on you immediately. Don't panic, as if you play it smart, you can survive most one-on-one encounters. The second that you get jumped on, pop your guard and wait them out. You can either follow up with your Seraph for a free instant cast heal, or a Miracle of Nature to help you retreat. Either way, you should be able to survive that encounter. Many of the different limit breaks provide buffs to their respective jobs, giving them a massive power increase for a short amount of time. And normally when you see one of these limit breaks active, you want to try to make the enemy waste as much time as possible to prevent them getting the full effect of it, or to help mitigate the damage that they're going to do. No ability wastes time better than Miracle of Nature, because as mentioned earlier, it can't be purged, meaning you're guaranteed to waste 2 seconds. So if you ever see a glowing black mage or a dying dark knight, it's time to ruin their day. Lastly, don't be afraid to use your limit break. It recharges faster than it should for how powerful it is. So just let it rip when you see the enemy standing in a line. It'll be back before you need it again. It's kind of ridiculous. And now for the final job on our list, in the Master of AoE Summoner. A DPS who loves to fight large groups and if used properly can absolutely bully an enemy team. And like the other 2 jobs on the list, it is incredibly simple to play, to the point where you barely have to select the correct target, as you'll likely still hit them anyways. So let's take a quick look at their kits and see why. Starting off our list of AoEs is the largest one in our normal kit, Slipstream, a targeted cast that not only does a good amount of initial damage, but also leaves a lingering donut that damages any enemy who passes through or stands in it. And as an extra little bonus, your party gets a little speed boost when moving through the ring, making it nice for chasing any retreating enemies. Basically, use this ability on cooldown. Moving on to our next ability is going to be Mountain Buster, Summoner's only form of crowd control. It's another targeted ability, this time an instant cast, that binds the initial target and slows any others that are nearby, pulling them to the original target, making it even easier to hit someone with your plethora of AoEs. And whether you're using it to pull the enemy together or to catch someone, you're almost always going to follow Mountain Buster up with our next ability, Crimson Cyclone. Another powerful targeted AoE, but this time in the form of a dash. That, after the initial hit, will transform into a more powerful instant ranged AoE, Crimson Strike, which is also a reverse of Mountain Buster, knocking all the enemies away from the initial target. The dash strike combo alone hits for about a third of most jobs' health in form of an AoE. It's a bit goofy. Believe it or not, Summoner does have at least one single target attack, that being Fester, an instant cast attack that gets more powerful the lower health the target is, maxing out when the target is at 50% or below. This ability is fantastic for finishing off any low health targets or getting damage out before they can heal. The last of Summoner's normal abilities is Radiant Aegis, which is a simple shield that also has the bonus effect of making you take 20% reduced damage while it's active. Keep in mind that this shield is targeted, so you can use it on others, not just yourself. Now we move on to their limit breaks, which for Summoner is a bit unique as they have two separate limit breaks that you can choose between: Summon Bahamut and Summon Phoenix. In the vast majority of cases, you'll be using Bahamut, but there are some niche cases where you'll use Phoenix. So let's quickly go over both, starting with Bahamut. Once you use the limit break, you'll be prompted to place an AoE, and upon confirming the area, Bahamut will be summoned, immediately casting Mega Flare, an incredibly powerful AoE. However, it doesn't stop there, as Bahamut will remain on the field, serving almost like a turret, attacking any nearby enemies, specifically whoever is the lowest health. While Bahamut is active, two of your abilities will also change. Your limit break button will change to Enkindle Bahamut, which upon used will cause him to cast Akmorn, another powerful targeted AoE. Who would have thought? The other ability that gets changed is your filler spell, Rune 3, which will be changed to Astral Pulse. It's just slightly more powerful. And now, let's talk about Phoenix. Instead of casting Mega Flare like Bahamut, Phoenix will instead cast Everlasting Flight, a powerful heal and regen on all party members in the radius. Like Bahamut, Phoenix will linger on the field, attacking the closest enemy to them, inflicting a debuff, reducing the target's damage by 50%. Instead of enkindling Bahamut, you enkindle Phoenix, which will have them cast Revelation instead, which is actually more powerful than Akmorn, but comes in the form of a dot, giving the enemy more opportunity to heal the damage. Rune 3 is again going to be replaced by another ability, Fountain of Fire, that has the same power, but turns it into an instant cast, allowing you to attack and move. Phoenix is generally going to be better if you're playing defensive or in 1v1 scenarios, but in most cases, Bahamut's going to be the way to go. And with that, let's get to our final tip section, starting with Slipstream. Do not underestimate this ability. The damage is nice and the range is a bit goofy, but the biggest draw is actually that donut it leaves on the field. This not only offers a nice zone of control that the enemy is going to want to avoid, but that movement speed buff is deceptively useful. It lets you reach health packs before the enemy, along with making it easier to chase anyone who's trying to flee. And speaking of retreating, let's talk about Crimson Cyclone. Being Summoner's strongest attack, you're obviously going to want to use this as much as possible. But the problem is that dashing into a group of enemies is likely going to get you killed, as you don't have a lot of health as a Summoner. For this reason, you almost always want to immediately retreat after dashing in, because there's no reason to stay there, as Crimson Strike is a ranged ability. It has the same range as all your other abilities. Now obviously, retreating isn't always going to be the easiest thing to do, as you might get stunned, or they might just focus you. Because of this, you always want to be ready to use your guard or purify anytime you dash in. It's also not a bad idea to use your shield before dashing in, because it does provide a healthy amount of durability. And of course, our last tip is going to be how to use your limit break. For Bahamut, it's pretty easy. You just have to ask yourself a couple things. Do you have all your cooldowns available? Are there at least 3 enemies in range? And is your party there to capitalize on it? If so, you're ready to go. Start with a Slipstream, pull them together with a Mountain Buster, unleash Bahamut, and dash in for an insane amount of AoE damage. Any survivors, you can give the Akmorn. As for Phoenix, it's a bit more complicated. like mentioned before, it's better when being defensive or in 1v1s. But a couple scenarios where you may want to use Phoenix over Bahamut is when your team is losing and you enter overtime, or if the enemy team is already really struggling with damage. That damage down from Phoenix's auto attacks can be kind of brutal. But that's basically everything I have to share with you. Hopefully, you found one of these options either interesting or useful, and ideally, you've learned something that will make grinding the Malmstone either easier or more fun. If you want a more detailed guide on the PvP game modes, then I have a Crystalline Conflict guide there and a Frontline guide there. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.